Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. In today's lesson, we're going to look at 5 words that businessmen, tech developers, and software engineers may use by mistake in their business meetings, job interviews, or AI stand-ups. And in return, we're going to learn 5 alternative words to use in those meetings. We're also going to look at sentences by example to learn how to use these words in those sentences and how to replace our mistakes with the right word. Before we start the lesson, I want to use a quote from myself explaining the role of a weak word in our daily lives. A weak word in a technical meeting is like a curse word to your wife. I'm pretty sure you don't want to curse at your wife, so make sure you don't use these weak words in your meetings. Use these words in your technical meetings to sound professional and authentic. The orange sentences on the left will be the incorrect version of the sentences and the words, and the green sentences on the right will be the correct ones. So let's pay attention carefully. In the first list, we have the word lag. Do not forget, usually we use the word lag in a gaming setup, specifically speaking when we are playing video games and there is a lower frequency of frames per second. So you might have some lags, or when you're using a mobile phone and some app is crashing and you have a lag there. But when it comes to technical meetings, it's better to use the word latency. Let's read the first sentence together. The app has a lot of lag whenever the model tries to answer. I'm trying to figure out why the bot is lagging so much today. Yeah, that's how we talk when we're talking to our colleagues. We need to fix the lag before we show this to the client. Is the lag coming from the server or the code? The users are going to complain about the lag in the chat window. That's when you're talking to a junior level coder or engineer. When you're talking to a higher level senior AI developer or tech developer, you must use the word latency to show exactly what you mean. The app has a lot of latency whenever the model tries to answer. I'm trying to figure out why the bot is facing latency so much today. We need to fix the latency issue before we show this to the client. Is the latency coming from the server or the code? Well, there are better versions for the word coming and all the other sentences as well, but we will go through them in another video. The users are going to complain about the latency in that chat window. Now, let's try not to forget. There are better versions for each sentence that I'm putting here, but for now, we're simply trying to focus on the word lag instead of the word latency. The other issues with the sentences will be fixed later in another video. If you like this version of the class, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so I keep producing these videos on a weekly basis. Thank you so much. The next word that is usually used by mistake is the word randomness instead of stochasticity. Now let's try to see where we use the word randomness when we're talking about coding. There's too much randomness in the answer we are getting. How do we stop the randomness from making the model say weird things? The randomness makes it really hard to test the same prompt twice. I think the randomness is set too high in the settings. Yeah. We need to get rid of this randomness if we want a consistent product. Now again, these are the sentences that you might use with junior level developers. However, let's try to see the version that you might want to use with senior level developers. There is too much stochasticity in the answers we're getting. How do we stop the model from being too stochastic? The stochasticity makes it really hard to test the same prompt twice. I think the stochasticity is set too high in the settings. We need to get rid of this stochasticity if we want a consistent product. Before we move on, you can pause the video and try to replace the word that is presented here in the green sentences in the blank. After that, we will continue. The next word that is usually used in the wrong space is growth instead of scalability. Let's try to look at some weak sentences in tech meetings using the word growth. The first sentence: can the model handle the growth of our user base next month? We need to prepare the servers for a lot of growth. The current setup isn't really built for growth. How will this code work once we see some real growth? I'm worried that growth will crash the system. Now let's try to look at the green sentences using the word scalability instead of the word growth. Can the model handle the scalability of our user base next month? We need to prepare the servers for a lot of scalability. The current setup isn't really built for scalability. How will this code work once we see some real scalability? I'm worried that scalability will crash the system. I'm worried that lack of scalability will crash the system. Both are correct. Let's take a look at the word learning instead of using the word generalizing or generalization. The first wrong sentence is, the model is learning the training data really well. We need to make sure it's learning the right patterns. It hasn't learned how to handle those types of questions yet. Is the model learning anything from the new dataset we added? The learning seems to be stuck, so the results are still bad. Let's take a look at the green sentences with the alternative generalization or generalizing. The model is generalizing the training data really well. We need to make sure it's generalizing the right patterns. It hasn't generalized how to handle those types of questions yet. Since this is present perfect, we must use it hasn't generalized. Is the model generalizing the new dataset we added? The generalization seems to be stuck, so the results are still bad. And the final sentence? The generalization seems to be stuck, so the results are still bad. Let's take a look at the next step. Sometimes software developers use the word speed instead of using the word throughput. So let's take a look at this. We need to increase the speed of the processing pipeline. The speed of the GPU isn't high enough for this many requests. How can we make the whole system have more speed? The batching is supposed to help with speed, right? Our total speed is way lower than the competitor's API. That's very bad. Now let's try to look at the alternative and using the word throughput correctly. We need to increase the throughput of the processing pipeline. The throughput of the GPU isn't high enough for this many requests. Can we make the whole system have more throughput? The batching is supposed to help with throughput, right? Our total throughput is way lower than the competitor's API. Thank you so much for paying attention to today's lesson. I hope it was useful for you. In our next lessons, we will try to learn new vocabulary and work on new idioms and phrases that you can use in your technical meetings or job interviews. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to support me further. Wish you the best. See you soon.